All right, the Senate Committee on Local Government will come to order. Before we call the roll, I see some of our pages are sitting down there, and so if you would come up to the podium and introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from, we'd certainly appreciate it. Welcome. And they look confused. Come on, up here. I want you to stand right here.
Do I
Yes.
need? Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Teddy Pillion, and I'm from Abingdon.
Pillion. Move to PBI. All right.
Hi, I'm Reese Smith, and I'm from Powhatan.
Welcome. Let's give a round of applause to our page. It was a great concert. All right, we've got one housekeeping matter, and of course it is under all this paper. Oh, sorry. Clerk, call the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And one piece of housekeeping, Senator Newman, as Senate Bill 367, he has asked that that bill be carried over in the committee for the year. Do I have a motion on that? Motion and a second properly made. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign? Or is that a recorded vote? All right, recorded vote. Clerk, open the roll. And close the roll.
Ayes 9, nays 0.
Ayes 9, nays 0. The bill is carried over for the year. All right, I made a promise to somebody I hold near and dear to my heart, Senator Dance, that even though she's lower on the queue, we're going to take her first because I like her best. All right, Cree? Cree got in here nice and early, thought he was going to be first up, but we're going to go with Senator Dance. Senator Dance, welcome. I know that you have many things to do, so let's try to get this up and over for you. All right.
Thank
Senator
you,
Dance.
Mr. Chair. It's Senate Bill 451.
Senate Bill 451.
Mr. Chairman, there is a substitute to this bill.
All right, let's have the substitute passed out.
While they're passing it out, Mr. Chairman, I will tell you that last year as a new senator for representing parts of Richmond, I was asked to carry a bill on behalf of the chief of police and one of their council members. And when it started getting a fever, I was wise enough to ask them if they would just lay my bill gently on the table and please, as the chair, would send a letter to the Joint Housing Commission so that they could better address it during the summer months, that might be a better solution for Richmond. And I'm here, Mr. Chair, because I feel like they have just that. The Joint Housing Commission worked on this particular bill that you have before you to address a remedy for neighborhoods that are made unsafe and blighted by drug abuse, drug dealing, and prostitution, primarily in hotels and motels. And Mr. Chairman, after this letter was sent, they gave me a firsthand walk in sandals, Mr. Chair. You'd appreciate that. Down a major stretch behind hotel buildings and alleyways or whatever, so I could truly understand the impact of what they were trying to address. And I was with the chief of police, but it was quite a deal. I learned a lot. And this bill defines criminal blight by expanding on drug blight to include commercial sex acts and maliciously discharging a firearm within the building. The bill works to change the policies and practices of the real property owner to abate crime. The owner would have 30 days to take corrective action to alleviate blight. The locality will assist the owner in this action if requested to do so. If the property is a hotel or motel and has been declared by the locality in a state of criminal blight, and the owner has taken those steps to fix the issue, and the law enforcement official has made reasonable efforts to obtain a copy of the guest registry, the locality may request an inspection warrant to obtain the guest registry of the hotel or motel. The blight would define criminal blight to include conditions on real property that endanger residents of the community by the regular presence of persons using the property for controlled substance use or sale and other criminal activities, specifically commercial sex trafficking or prostitution. As this work began in the commission, we found out it was just not just Richmond. There were rural police chiefs like Danville. They were also interested in additional localities came forward that wanted to be involved and at the table. And there was a lot of work, a lot of drafts made before they reached peace in the valley as far as how this bill should be addressed. And one of our best wordsmithers on this is Mr. Chip Dix, and I'm sure you all know him. So if there are additional questions and some more history, he'll be right here to answer any questions you might have. But this is not a complete fix, but this is a bipartisan effort to remedy an issue affecting many cities, towns, and rural communities within the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Senator Nance. Let's get your bill in proper form. Let's take up the amendment in the nature of substitute. Do I have a motion? Motion being made to accept the amendment in the nature of substitute, and a second being properly made. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, a recorded vote, or all in favor? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign, and the amendment is before us. Thank you, Senator Dance. I see Mr. Dix in his Technicolor dream coat.
That's what I said too, Mr. Chair.
Or just for you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome back, Mr. Dix. How you feeling?
I'm doing great, sir. How about you?
You're looking good, sir, and I love that jacket.
Well, last time I wore it to the Housing Commission, you called the Capitol Guards and tried to have me removed, so.
I do recall that. It is quite a distraction. I don't even listen to what you're saying, which maybe is a good thing. Yeah. All right, Mr. Dix, would you like to comment on this? Since I know that you worked on this, I sit on the Housing Commission. I have one question, and
Yes,
you know,
sir.
part of my concern is that something like this could be used as a tool of law enforcement, basically to enter on the premises of a place where they may not have a probable cause or reasonable suspicion that criminal activity is taking place, but they're under in the same thing that sometimes can be said a wellness check or a blight check. And that they are able then to obtain evidence that they're otherwise not entitled to otherwise by a warrant. Can you tell me whether that's been addressed?
Mr. Chairman, it has on the substitute pages 6 and 7. What we did based upon the chairman's recommendation was we limited this to a subpoena, effectively a search warrant only for the guest registry. So there's no right of the of law enforcement to go inside either the dwelling unit or the hotel room. So that addressed that issue substantially. And also on page 4, lines 85 through 86, this is a civil proceeding and not a criminal proceeding. So we tried to, based upon the dialogue you and I had at the Housing Commission, went back and fixed that.
Okay. Any questions of the patron or Mr. Dix? Or do you have questions of Mr. Dix's coat?
Question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Senator Favola.
I think this is a question for either the patron or Mr. Dix. The local government would have to would have to adopt an ordinance to implement all this. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that is absolutely correct. And this is based upon a drug blight bill that Tim Oaksman, when he was city attorney in Richmond, and I wrote probably 20 years ago or more. And what we've done is taken the drug blight construct of allowing the locality to say to the property owner, you take care of this and make these physical changes to your structure to stop this kind of drug activity. We've expanded it to certain limited criminal activity, which includes, discharging a firearm inside a dwelling unit or outside, and also commercial sex trafficking and
Well,
prostitution.
that makes me feel better because, Mr. Chairman, I will just say that there's a process that local governments have to go through in adopting an ordinance, and there'll be some public input. So this is enabling legislation. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, a question for
Senator Morris.
the patron. Although this is a civil search warrant, if you will, to go in, if the owner of the hotel or motel is found to be knowledgeable that felony activity is going on, can they be held accountable in this situation? I would assume for conspiracy.
I don't think so.
Or in that activity. Is that correct?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would say to Senator Marston that the answer is that, first of all, there's no right of inspection inside the hotel room or the dwelling unit. The only right of inspection warrant is to obtain a copy of the guest registry of a hotel. And there's no other right of inspection warrant to go inside the structure.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think Senator Sturtevant has a question. Go ahead, Glenn.
I don't mean to bill any harm, Mr. Dix. Does this, I don't do criminal law, but does the civil warrant that we're talking about here in the substitute exist in other areas of the law? I'm not familiar with it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just was curious if we're creating something new here.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd say to the Senator that, first of all, this is based upon the drug blight statute that has been in effect since 1992, I believe. And so that is an enabling statute that allows localities to use these existing tools. There's also a statute section after this one that deals with nuisance in the very same way, because some of those nuisance offenses can be criminal, but they also could be treated as a civil basis. And what the testimony was in the Housing Commission work group was that for the most part, the law enforcement is not as much concerned about arresting somebody and trying somebody, because oftentimes you can't get somebody to testify, so you don't reach the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, as you are getting the property owner to cooperate with the locality to clean up the circumstances, the blighted property, if you will. And so that's these statutes, this, spot blight, some of the other provisions that deal with blight nuisance-related things are all designed to give the locality tools to deal with the property owner as opposed to prosecuting the criminal case.
Mr. Chair, follow up.
Senator Sturban.
And I understand that. Thank you, Mr. Dix. Did the civil warrant, as it's outlined here in the on page 6, lines 153 to 163, did that similar mechanism? Did a similar mechanism exist? Does it exist elsewhere in this existing legislation, existing code section?
Mr. Chairman, I realize I didn't answer your specific question. I apologize for that. So what we've done on line 153 and so on is to model it after the language on line 138 on the building code violation. So what happens is, in a building code violation, if inside the dwelling unit, the landlord or the tenant occupant does not allow the building official in, but there's an expectation of health, imminent threat to health or safety or so on, the inspection warrant is allowed under that circumstance.
I see it. Yep.
We modeled
Thank
it
you.
after that.
Further questions? Hearing none, is there anyone who would like to speak in support of this bill or in support of Mr. Dick's jacket?
It's a little bright. I need sunglasses.
I know. Look away, look away.
That's right. Mr. Chairman, Michelle Gowdy from the Virginia Municipal League, also speaking for the Virginia Association of Counties. We both worked on this bill with the Housing Commission, and we support the bill.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Mr. Chairman, Ron Jordan, representing the city of Richmond.
Yes,
You've heard from the history, this emanated from a proposal by our chief of police. The Housing Commission did yeoman's work on this over the summer, and we very much support the item.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else want to speak in favor? Anyone who is opposed to this bill? Okay. Well, this committee operates by motion.
Second.
Motion being properly made to report the bill and the second supporting it. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, clerk, open the roll.
12 ayes, 1 nay.
Only because I think it should be discussed on the floor. I
Thank
plan
you.
on changing my vote. Congratulations,
Mr.
Bill
Chair.
451 reports 12-1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Deeds. Sorry we bumped you. I think you have a request with regard to one of your bills.
Senate Bill 681 comes to the request of the town of Iron Gate. Now, their town attorney advised me this morning that they won't actually meet on this until tomorrow night. So they don't have an ordinance approving this request yet. And so I'd ask if you could put this off till next week. I'd appreciate it.
Okay, is there any discussion on his request? Need a motion to carry it over until next time's meeting? Motion properly made, second, supporting it. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Is this a roll call? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. And that, we will see you and the people of Iron Gate next week.
Next week. Now I've got
The Iron Gate slammed shut today. All right.
It's Iron Gate's it's a pretty interesting little place.
Love the place. I've been through it and stopped there
You've
many
got, you
times.
probably vacationed there.
I have.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
It's a wonderful place.
I've Senate Bill 667.
But you can't speed there. You
You
have to
can't
watch your
speed
speed.
in Iron Gate. Cha-ching, cha-ching.
That's right. You gotta watch
The ATM
yourself.
is operational.
They're waiting for you. And that's food for, that's a good thought for everybody when you're going through Iron Gate.
When you go through Iron Gate, the speed zone goes from 45 to 35 and then back to 45.
That's
Pretty
right.
quickly, and
That's
so
right.
you don't really know unless you've been through there a time or two.
That's right. And if you need an attorney, call Stanley and Houchins. I'm just kidding. All right, Senator Deed,
You'd be
667.
poaching on my territory, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Called-
Senate Bill 667.
Called Cree Deeds PLLC. Sorry.
Senate Bill 667 is a bill you all saw a couple weeks ago, and it's not changed at all. You know, what I'm trying to do is give localities the ability to prevent pretenders, people who want to pretend that they're soldiers. Because they're, in the police report or in the report done by the former U.S. attorney on the Charlottesville situation, there were interviews with police officers. They couldn't tell the good guys from the bad guys because there were bad guys who wanted to pretend like they had the valor and the shield of the U.S. military. As we discussed before, Mr. Chair, this language is not, if somebody wanted to challenge something down the road in court, they wouldn't be challenging this enabling legislation. They'd be challenging whatever ordinance the locality passed. So this language simply would enable localities to pass an ordinance to prevent people from imitating active military.
All right, any questions of the patron? Senator Sturdivant.
Senator Deeds, we had a similar bill in courts that dealt with impersonating
Yes, and
armed
it
forces
went to the
and National
Finance
Guard.
Committee.
Right.
Because it just had the $50,000 financial tag. This is another vehicle that would accomplish basically that same purpose in case, or accomplish the purpose in a different way. It would give the locality the ability. That would have statewide application, but it has to get through the Finance Committee. And if it does that, if it got through this process, this legislation wouldn't be necessary. And certainly, it would not be, if I were fortunate enough to get both bills through the legislature, I would strike one. I'd probably strike this one.
Senator Deeds, my question, of course, inherent in our Constitution are certain freedoms and rights. And,
Yes.
the ability to wear what you want kind of falls into that. I mean,
And I understand that, Mr. Chair, but we have already recognized that those who imitate police officers are violating the law. And the police officers are authority figures. And in this instance, in Charlottesville this past summer, and in other instances, the National Guard are called out as well. So you have not only police officers, you have active duty military people. And this legislation would basically accomplish the same purpose as the statute that prohibits imitation of police officers. But more than that, Mr. Chair, we have passed legislation in this body to prohibit adults from wearing masks. I mean, certainly you could argue that an adult, if they have the right to wear what they want to, has the right to wear a mask. And we've deemed that that's, in the matter of public safety, it's in the public interest that we not have that.
Senator Favolo.
Mr. Chairman, just another way of looking at this. Wouldn't it be possible for a local government to say the police on duty for this permitted demonstration would be wearing yellow armbands? So, I mean, the local government could take a step to more proactively identify the police as opposed to trying to, regulate what the participants might be.
I guess they could, Madam. I guess they could, Mr. Chair, Madam, or Senator.
That's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Hanger.
Yes, we've heard this bill before, and I represent part of the same area that Senator Deeds does, and the concern, of course, being what happened around University of Virginia and Charlottesville. So for purposes of expediting things, I move that they'll be reported.
Was there anyone here that would like to speak? Before we get there, hold on. There's a motion. We're going to hold that motion, freeze it up a little bit. Senator Carrico.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if anyone on this committee's been in more riots and civil unrest than I have. And I know what Senator Dees is trying to get to, and I don't think what the individuals were wearing was the problem that day. I think the problem was with the coordination of this, and I think his opening comment, former prosecutor, probably helps in what happened that day to describe some of the things that some people failed to do. I can assure you that the police know who the bad guys are. They don't, it doesn't matter what they're wearing. And I'm afraid, like the chairman, that you're going to tread on some constitutional rights when it's obvious who the violators are. And I think that they could have solved this civil unrest had they not been held back from doing it.
Well, Matt, Mr. Chair, Senator Carrico, I didn't come up here to throw any spears at any police agency that was involved in that day. It was a terribly complicated day. And I don't disagree with you that there were organizational issues that could have and should have been handled differently. But in the report, the Hayfie report, there are interviews with police officers that confirm basically, what I saw that day, what other people have told me were there. They couldn't tell who was the good guy and who was the bad guy. There was an interview in the Hayfie report, interview of a police officer who said he couldn't tell who the good guys were and who the bad guys were. So that was from people on the street that day, August 12th, 2017.
And Senator, is that what you're referencing? So if a police officer cannot tell who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, is that where the attire constitutes a threat to the public safety or welfare?
Well, I mean, then this language just guides localities and how they draft ordinances. The ordinance will have to be drafted in compliance with this authorization, this statute if we pass it.
Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two quick stories. In talking with some of the folks who were here, Secretary Moran and some of his staff folks, when they were on the ground in Charlottesville, Secretary Moran started to go toward who he thought were Virginia National Guardsmen to say, thank you for being here. And Capitol Police had to go get him and basically say, Mr. Secretary, they're not ours. So there was a lot going on the ground that day, but there was confusion about who was who. Here in the city of Richmond in September, when Confederate States 2 were coming to Richmond, and we weren't sure quite what to expect, and that rally was right around the corner from my house. And there were individuals who appeared to be law enforcement who weren't. And I think part of the issue is law enforcement can't tell who's who sometimes, but your average citizen who wants to come and express their First Amendment rights also can't tell who's who, so that if they feel threatened and they go to the wrong person, that's a problem. So I think, yes, what happened in Charlottesville was a multitude of issues, but there is no dispute that people were confused by individuals who looked like they were law enforcement or National Guard or military who were not.
And I guess I'd only, thank you, Senator McClellan. I mean, but does that in and of itself constitute a threat to the public safety?
It could, actually. I mean, it could. There was one of the stories about here in the city of Richmond was there was a guy who was dressed to look like sort of a law enforcement officer who basically said to some folks, "I'm here to protect you." Now, that might be in that person's mind, they're here to protect them. But if that individual was threatened and looking for law enforcement and went to that person who did not have the authority to make an arrest or detain anybody, then that could affect public safety.
All right. Is anybody else? Oh, Senator McPike, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question actually to my friend Senator Carrico. If we were to look at this bill on line 14, after regulate, comma, insert or, and then after restrict, comma, delete or prohibit, it would enable, for instance, a locality to, when assessing the public safety threat based on the composition of whatever protest it might be, to issue, say, a lanyard or something that identifies that the participants as a part of the demonstration or activity that is permitted for that day, and therefore help to distinguish between law enforcement or others, given your experience in public safety?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Carrico, we're interviewing each other right now, so everybody sit back and relax and watch the fun.
It's not my bill, but, I mean, I don't care for someone to wear a wristband. I mean, that's up to the, but I think when you start restricting the clothing, during the coal strike in 1989, I spent 10 weeks in the coal strike. We had agents and law enforcement dressed up like coal miners just to gather intel. And so we were trained to recognize the differences. We were, and I can guarantee you, even in this report, you'll find out that intel was gathered months in advance. They knew what was coming, but there was a neglect there to recognize how severe this was going to be. Unlike Richmond, which adhered to what the intel told and was able to prevent it from happening. So I understand what the patron's trying to get to, but I don't feel like what we're doing here, hunters, anyone else who dress in some type of attire like this are going to be captured in this language.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just.
Senator Deeds, please.
I don't think that's, and I understand, I hear that, but I just disagree because it requires, whatever ordinance is passed requires that what the activity we're getting is something that gives, on line 16, gives a reasonable person the impression that the wearer is an on-duty member. Now, certainly there's a difference between what an on-duty member would wear and the fatigues you might wear when you go hunting.
Well, Mr. Chairman, there is a difference.
Senator Carrico.
There is a difference now because policing has changed. Fatigue uniforms are worn more often than ever before. Used to be uniformed. In Virginia Beach, we were in dress blues, marching down the middle of the street. There was no question who we were until the lamps and couches started hitting us. No one else knew, but it's changed now, and the ability, as Senator Steph said, for anyone to be able to buy those type of clothing and wear them routinely now is more prevalent than it was then.
All right. Is there anyone who'd quickly like to speak for or against the bill? All right, seeing none.
Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion to report.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the line amendment.
Okay, Senator McPike, we withdraw your motion to report. Motion to report has been withdrawn. Let's hear your line amendment and see if Senator Deeds likes it.
Line 14, after regulate, comma, insert or. Second would be after restrict, delete, comma, or prohibit. And Mr. Chairman, I think that would deal with some of the predominance of the issues that have been discussed in the committee while still allowing the flexibility to do armbands and other things to identify. I think it's important that we enable localities to provide some level of public safety security in these types of circumstances.
Thank you, Senator. Is that a friendly amendment to you?
That's okay.
Senator Deeds says that's a friendly amendment. Is there a motion? Well, I guess you moved it.
Second.
Second being there. Any discussion? Senator Sturban.
And I don't know if we have any constitutional scholars up here. I'm not one, but is there precedent for the idea was raised of you wear a lanyard or a wristband or something? Is there a precedent of having to essentially go to a government authority to exercise your First Amendment right to assemble, and then wear something that identifies you differently than others. I have a little bit of pause about that.
Well, and as I heard Senator Favolish, what she talked about was giving law enforcement that recognizable.
Wearing a band, say, well, I mean, this is another way of looking at it, rather than trying to get into.
Because I would certainly share your concern about
So,
First Amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff.
Senator Favola.
So my idea about enabling police officers to wear identifying bands, which would be easier to do, they're part of the government, they can, it might be easier to do than figuring out how to regulate clothing of participants. We don't need to put that in ordinance. I would think they can do that anyways. So I really respect the patron of this bill. I just continue to have reservations. I'm trying to figure out how this would be implemented in a way that would respect everybody's rights,
Mr. Chairman.
And hold on. And I just looked up the,
Mr.
the
Chairman,
definition in our code for restrict, to put a limit on, keep under control, to deprive someone or something of freedom of movement or action, to limit someone to only doing or having a particular thing or staying in a particular place. So you're saying regulate or restrict, and those would be the definitions of restrict, if you're not.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We frequently attend events that use this, whether it be concerts or the inauguration that we all or most of us just attended, to designate areas, other such provisions, which are means of securing
That's
those
called a beer
public
garden,
activities.
actually. Where you go. Beer garden.
Mr. Chairman, I one other suggestion.
Senator Favola.
Again, I'm trying to be more positive than restrictive. Could local government just require anybody participating in this permitted peaceful demonstration to wear some kind of band or some kind of identifier at the which is done at, if you're going to a bench, if you're going to inauguration, people clip something on your. I'm just trying to find ways that.
Senator Sturdivant.
Mr. Chairman, I think just because there are a lot of thorny constitutional issues here, and with respect to the patron, he has another bill that's in front of finance that I think also looks to address this issue. I would have a substitute motion to.
There's no motion currently pending, and I guess the courtesy would be to see if Senator Hanger would like to reinstitute his motion first before you make one, if that's all right.
Either way you want to go, Mr. Chairman. I was just trying.
Thanks a lot. You're really helping me out here.
Thanks a lot, buddy. Here. So if he wants to offer a substitute motion, I move the bill be reporting.
Well, so a motion is made to report the bill. Is there a second? Second.
Substitute motion to gently PBI.
So the substitute motion being the primary motion, is there any discussion on that motion? That is to pass the bill gently by. Senator Deeds, and I understand you've been working hard on this, and I understand, look, we had discussions about stolen valor, something that's very upsetting to me, and I think if we had it in the context of just stolen valor, that might be a different thing. I worry about the constitutional implications here.
But the
Charlottesville was a
same
horrible.
one applied to theft of, imitating a police officer.
Yeah, no,
The exact same arguments.
And I get that.
Yeah.
And we all hated and were appalled by what happened in Charlottesville from the beginning to the end. And I think we have to find solutions so that never happens again. I do recall, my recollection is those people in this regalia weren't arrested or charged with any violence, to my recollection. So, so I'm worried more about the constitutional issues as well. Would anybody else like to talk to this bill briefly? Seeing none, our substitute motion on the floor is to gently pass this by indefinitely, with many thanks to Senator Deeds for what he's trying to do. Clerk, open the roll.
Seven ayes, 6 nays.
7 ayes, 6 nays. This is passed by indefinitely, very gently. Thank you, Thank you, Senator Deeds, for all your hard work on this. The next will be Senator Stewart, because I know he's got a lot of hard work to do. Hi, Stewie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good to see you, Mr.
Good
Chairman.
catch on the First Amendment issue, too.
Thank you very much. I
Especially
appreciate when you
after
see
the
that.
example that Mr. Dix provided you.
Well, thank you very much.
Um,
There's that pesky Constitution, which I read every now and then.
I know that we're always trying to be cognizant of.
All right, which bill would you like to kill? I mean, which one do you want?
Have you got any of your bills?
Senate Bill 211.
Mr. Chairman,
All
Senate
right.
Bill 211. So all this bill does is it.
Oh, wait. Senator Stewart, as long as I've known you, that when you open with your argument that says all this bill does, there's something more. So please, members of this committee, keep your eyes out.
It is
okay?
such a small bill to modify a very important topic, and that is groundwater sustainability in our communities. And that essentially is what it does. It just allows localities to put in their comp plans consideration of sustainability of their groundwater and surface water resources. And let me tell you why it's important. So this actually came to me. She's not my constituent, but she's going to come up and speak in just a minute, out of Prince William County, and she's the director of the Prince William Soil and Water Conservation Service. But here's the issue. In the part of the world that I represent and some of the others, you others represent, we have this body of water called the Potomac Aquifer. And it's a giant freshwater lake under our feet. And it's where millions of people and businesses get all of their drinking water from. That thing is being depleted at an alarming rate. Now, there are a lot of causes for that, and we're going to see bills that try to dance around the issue. There's some really large industrial users that are using that drinking quality water for cooling and such, and there should be other alternatives for them. But the problem is this recent report. And I don't want to misstate this, but we had a recent report on the aquifer which essentially said if we make some minor adjustments, we can kind of stay even for the next 10 or 20 years. And that means no growth, no new homes, no new business activity, no nothing. And so it's becoming a real serious issue in the part of the world that I represent. And so this is a small thing to give the localities the ability to make this a priority in their comp plans, which frankly, Mr. Chairman, I believe the Constitution already does that. This water is supposed to be directed towards human consumption. Is supposed to be, the predominant use of it, and that's what we're getting to. But this is recognizing the issue, and it's trying to give localities the ability to deal with it. I'll answer any questions, Ken, and I do have a speaker that would like to.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. First, are there any questions of the patron? Senator Carrico.
Does this apply statewide?
It applies statewide, but it comes in.
Senator Carrico.
No, I don't think you're.
Over Afton Mountain?
No. Just call it east of 95 if you want. And that's essentially right, but it's not entirely accurate. But pretty much east of 95. Your localities, I don't think, are going to be concerned about this. These really affect these east of 95 localities.
So you would be amenable to an amendment to say east of 95?
I just don't want to make it special legislation is all. I'd prefer not to have it be special legislation.
Oh, Senator Stewart, you remember when you did that to my electric bill?
What?
Remember you exempted
I have
Prince
no
William County?
recollection.
Oh,
What are you talking about?
such short memories here in the General Assembly.
Mr. Chairman, would it be special legislation if it was east of 95 because it takes in more than just one planning district? It takes in several different.
It wouldn't, no.
My opinion is, based on my brief conversation with Senator Hanger, it would be special. Would not.
Could my witness testify, Mr. Chairman?
Of course. Are there any more questions for Senator Stewart? While we have Senator Stewart, it's such a rare occasion. Let's.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Chase.
You're so welcoming, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Stewart, I just have a question about the possibility of hexavalent chromium or coal ash. Would you be detecting that in your water supply as well to ensure there's clean drinking water for your residents?
Well, this bill really doesn't deal with that. But I think we've got some bills coming up Thursday that we can talk about with regard to that.
Very good, thank you.
Senator Servo. You're in the queue to talk? Okay. Senator Steph, do you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, I think that this opens up to different studies from a hydrology standpoint, stormwater flow, and other things. So if we're going to move this west of 95, I would like to move it east of Williamsburg and just kind of put the bounds on it, because I know there's a lot of smaller localities that don't have the subject matter expert staff to handle doing the analysis of these hydrology studies, hydraulic studies, stormwater flow studies, an additional requirement from groundwater penetration. And unfortunately, in my district, if we get a good rain and it's a high tide, then you can stick a pen in the ground and hit your groundwater table. And that's where I have some very grave concerns about the impact on this. What this would do to the cost of development in my locality would be, it would drive up that cost tremendously.
And,
Well,
and let me address
Senator
that.
Stewart, well, first, we're just trying to get you ready for House Crim sub
And
after
so
crossover.
what I would tell Senator DeSteph is that his area is probably one of the hardest hit right now by the Potomac Aquifer. He's already got saltwater infiltration into that, and they've got to use desalinization techniques in order to utilize that drinking water. So it's your decision, but this would really benefit you. And I say that despite the fact that I had to wait for him for 30 minutes because he bumped me in line in P&E because he said he had to come over here and chair this committee.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond real quick to Senator Stewart.
Oh, boy, here we go.
I'm just going to respond on
Senator
one
Steph.
part. I'll let you handle the other. In Virginia Beach, my locality, Mr. Chairman, we get our water from Lake Gaston. We have a secondary and tertiary water supply. And only is our tertiary water supply the concern where we would have to do desalinization of that water. Our primary and secondary, we don't have to worry about that.
Oh, where I live, we call that stealing our water. All right, let's have your fine guest come forward if she dares now, after listening to that. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Ward. I am an elected director of the Prince William Soil and Water Conservation District. I'd like to thank the chairman and the senators of the Senate Committee on Local Government for allowing me to speak on SB 211. This bill would amend, as Senator Stewart pointed out, the enabling legislation for the comprehensive plan. But why is it important? This proposed change was endorsed by the Virginia Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts Board of Directors in September of 2017 and ratified by the entire membership at our annual meeting last December. Virginia is dependent on groundwater. According to Virginia Tech, 1.7 million people depend on private drinking water, groundwater wells for all their water supply. In addition, the U.S. Geological Survey tells us that 750,000 Virginians depend on private or public community supply wells. In total, that means 30% of all Virginians are entirely dependent on groundwater for their drinking water. This does not include Senator DeSteff's tertiary backup. Water resources can only be managed on a local level. There are already problems with availability, quality, and sustainability of groundwater in Virginia in places beyond the Potomac Aquifer. Fauquier County has neither adequate supply nor quality supply in Marshall. They are trying to science their way into a plan on how to solve it. Loudoun County has had supply problems and quality problems with their groundwater supply. They are expanding their access and using quarries for reservoirs. In Virginia, there is new information about groundwater in Virginia. Now NASA can use their satellites to actually see the change in groundwater quantity from space. In the first decade of data that they collected and have made available from 2003 to 2013, all the aquifers in Virginia were being depleted. The groundwater was being used faster than it was recharging everywhere. This bill requires counties to consider both surface water and groundwater availability. It could be, if they are dependent on groundwater, it could be as simple as looking at the level in the local well and noting its change. Staff is aware of it. They need to report on water. It's pulling together the information they report to other areas. Qualities and sustainability are important. It is a necessary next step to ensure the availability of sustainable, good quality water for all Virginians. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Any questions? Cervil, you have a question?
Want to speak to the bill, fine.
Okay, and does anyone have a question of this witness? Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it greatly. Senator Cervil. All right, motion being made to report. Is there a second? Yeah. And a second. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of the bill or against the bill?
Speaking in favor of the bill. Mr.
Hold
Chairman.
on. I saw somebody pop up. We want to make sure that.
Oh, that.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nicole Bruder with Reed Smith on behalf of the home builders. Sorry to slow things down. I do have a question about the bill, and speaking in opposition, I think this creates some uncertainty, especially for the home building industry. We are not sure what this would allow the localities to do that they cannot do already. To clarify some things that have been mentioned, this bill applies statewide, and while incorporation in the comp plan is permissive, the implementation of the plan is mandatory. So it would require all localities statewide to use this in the implementation of their plan. Right now, localities can plan for and develop long-range water supply needs. This includes regional conversations about aquifers. That is already the process. Developers have to comply with the comp plan, and so I am not sure what this language would actually allow localities to do that they are not already doing, and what developers would have to then comply with in the comp plan.
Senator Stewart, do you have a reply to that?
I do, Mr. Chairman. She said not once but twice that she wasn't sure what the bill allowed them to do that they couldn't already do, so I don't know why she objects to it then. What the bill does is it puts an emphasis on sustainability, and it's sustainability of groundwater and surface water, so that we can ensure that people have water to drink going forward.
Senator Stewart, isn't sustainability, though, in the eyes of the beholder sometimes?
Mr. Chairman.
No, I think it helps us plan.
I mean, it's not an objective standard, sustainability.
Well, I think what it means is, so you have a locality and they look at it and they go, the aquifer head has dropped below 10,000 feet now, and it's going to cost people $50,000 to dig a well. And so the locality can look at this and go, you know what, we really need to plan for a reservoir like Lake Gaston, but do it within their own community. So it gives them it gives them tools to help them plan for the future. And I think it's really important because water's getting more and more precious every day.
Mr. Chairman.
For us to drink.
Senator Stewart, I often ponder the question, what would Mike Tolson say? So what would you say Mike Tolson would say about this?
Mike would love this bill because Mike would understand where I'm really going with this bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, friend. Okay, Senator Cervil.
Do you notice? And I gotta say, you notice Mike Tolson retired a year after that damn proffer bill?
Yeah.
He's a smart guy. Left it to Andrew's lap.
Let it be the legacy.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the patron.
Senator Cervil. Put that gum away.
Yep, I had to get the gum away. We're on the camera now. So for the patron, the existing statute says the comprehensive plan only has to survey and study groundwater and surface water, which in its sort of historical meaning, I think most people would just consider, say, the quality of it running off the land, right? And so my question is, given that the bill before didn't mention either availability or sustainability of the water, wouldn't you agree that the statute now sort of gives local government a little bit more clarity as to that they need to make sure that it also includes those factors as well, and not just the quality of what's running off from what we develop?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
What a love fest that was.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Hold on, Senator Carrico's in the
jealous 'cause you weren't
queue.
part of it?
I am
apologize.
jealous. Senator Carrico.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to offer an amendment that the counties west, or the localities west of I-95 not be affected by the legislation.
Much as I like the senator from Grayson, you know what? I'll take it if that's all I can get, but I really don't want it.
You know he's going to strip it off as soon as he gets on the floor. Staff, is that possible? I mean, looking at, this is a comprehensive plan. I don't see any.
It is, but there's a,
It's pretty much
That it wouldn't
95.
apply to localities west of I-95? Of Afton, Mattapan?
Is this
I
a
don't
friendly
care as long as
amendment,
they don't
hostile
get-
amendment, semi-friendly, hostile amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I don't like to, number one, there's no way I'm supporting your bill if it applies to my region when we have no impact on what you're trying to do.
The only thing I would point out, Mr. Chairman, to Senator Carrico
I
is
already have enough problems.
the counties haven't opposed this. They didn't come up and speak against it that I'm aware of. And I'm not, and I have been
Anybody from the
visited by
counties want to come up
Sometimes I
and
don't
prove them wrong?
exactly do what the counties.
Anybody want to speak to that? All right, Senator Favola, you had something?
Well, I guess I have a question for the patron. As I read the bill, I would expect that local governments could decide through their comprehensive plan to reduce their development envelopes, to keep more land pristine, if you will, because we're worried about the quality of the groundwater. I mean, that is a potential result of this.
It
I'm just trying to
could be-
fully understand.
Mr. Chairman, it could be a potential, they could use this if they wanted to say it was because of this.
Yeah.
But they could use a million other reasons to deny development as well. They wouldn't have to rely on something like this.
But they could.
But they could use a million things to deny development.
Mr. Chairman.
They wouldn't
Senator
have to
Servo.
rely on this.
Can I speak to the bill finally?
I thought you did.
Thank you. So, the 36th district that I represent straddles the eastern water groundwaters management area because 95 is on both, or 95 runs right down the middle of the 36th district. I actually get the water from my home out of the only private well water system in all Fairfax County. It's been working since 1941, although 2 or 3 of our wells have dried up. We've had to re-drill them because there are problems. And I think it was 2 years ago, the Department of Environmental Quality put a well moratorium, if I'm not mistaken, or some sort of drilling well moratorium on the eastern groundwater management area because the aquifer has been dropping.
They made it a groundwater management area.
Right,
So they're
and
now
they're
watching it.
Yeah, and they're restricting well usage now. In addition to that, Northern Virginia is having, if they look in the crystal ball 30, 40, 50 years out, they're concerned about whether there's enough water in the Potomac River to feed the entire DC metro area, which is why we have the Interstate Commission of the Potomac River Basin, which has 3 reservoirs upstream. And so our localities are already thinking about this in at least in terms of that. But, groundwater and surface water are increasingly limited qualities even here on the East Coast. And it's something that our governments need to start taking into account unless we're going to have our grandchildren, having rock gardens in their front yard instead of grass. So, I think it's a good forward-looking bill. That's something we need to start planning for. And I think even in the western part of the state, I think there's potentially groundwater problems. I mean, I know that there's a lot of spoiled groundwater wells in the western part due to coal mining that's caused groundwater problems in various parts. I mean, the senator from Galax might be able to enlighten me on that, but I know that, at least when I took some trips down there, they told me that. But I just think groundwater and surface water is a precious commodity. This makes us think about it and be forward-looking about it, and we ought to support it.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, I think we had a motion.
I move to report.
Motion being made to report. Senator Carrico. Second being made now. Discussion on the bill, Senator Carrico.
Well, I would just reiterate, in the dilemma of economic development, we are required to fall into lines of things that are protecting bodies of water that are never going to be affected by us. I don't know if there's a way to say this, exempting planning districts 1, 2, and 3 from it to where it's not going to affect us. But I think for economic development purposes and all that we do through the restrictions that are made here in Richmond because of what you're trying to protect, and I understand that, affects us greatly in Southwest Virginia whenever those rules apply and the localities have the ability to jump on board and do things to prevent those from happening in our region. And that's the biggest fear I've got.
And Mr. Chairman, Senator Carrico, this really isn't aimed at that. You all don't have those water issues. You're not concerned about it.
You're right. We don't, and that's what bothers me about it.
Right. I understand.
All right, we have a motion and a second
Mr.
on the
Chairman.
floor, properly supported. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator DeStefs.
My concern on this is really that as soon as you add surface water, groundwater availability, quality, sustainability, this is going to be a hugely impacted bill to developers, builders, because the localities are going to require these additional studies. And I can see this happening now where we get builders, developers, real estate attorneys, yes, even real estate attorneys, and realtors who already are complaining about the different studies it takes, how long it takes to get development plans through, how long it takes to get building plans through. I mean, this is just going to put the brakes on the entire industry again. And frankly, that industry is just starting to reinvigorate. So I think this bill would be very harmful to those, and I just can't support it because I can see the negative effects on this, and I know they're not intended by the patron. I know that those are unintended consequences, but I think that this is one, not only should we pump the brakes, we need to put both feet on it and stand on it. But that's just my thoughts.
Well, we have a motion on the floor to report and a second properly made. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk open the roll.
Ten ayes, 3 nays.
You really stuck it to him, didn't you, guys? Me, you,
Thank
and
you,
Carrico to Steph.
Mr. Chairman, the pleasure coming to your committee.
Senator Stewart, always a pleasure to see you, sir. All right, Senator Peake. One of these very controversial charter bills.
Senate Bill 871,
Let's see if we can.
charter bill on behalf of the town of Amherst. They would like to stagger their elections. And they have 2-year terms. They want to go to 4-year terms and stagger. And I cannot recall at this point whether they had a whole new town council elected or whether, and threw out some, or whether the other ones got tired and didn't run again, but they got 5 new ones and a new mayor, and they had no continuity. So they would like to go to 4-year terms and stagger them out as proposed in the bill.
All right, any questions of the patron on this charter bill?
Mr. Chairman, I move to report.
Hold on, do we have anybody from the town of Amherst who wants to tell us that you actually want this?
I don't believe so.
Well, we're just going to have to go on faith then, Senator Peake.
It's very scary indeed.
Motion to report being made. Is there a second? Second being properly supported. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, clerk open the roll.
Thank you.
Senator
12 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, 13-0, the Senate Bill 871 reports. Now, Senator Hanger says he has to go to Finance because he's all big and fancy. Thank you very much. All right, sir. And then what we're going to do, kids, is I've got to go to a meeting, so I'm going to present my bills real quick, my awesome solar bills, and then I'm going to turn this over to the comedy stylings of Senator DeStefs. So enjoy. Senator Hanger, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 538 deals with courthouse relocations or improvements. Mr. Chairman, this is a fairly simple bill. It's a clarification that will allow, in this instance, Augusta County, and I do have the chairman of the Augusta County Board of Supervisors here, the county administrator, and one of our government relations folks who used to be a senator.
Indeed, my senator.
Yes, indeed, here to help on this. Mr. Chairman, there was a referendum in Augusta County about moving the courthouse, the historic courthouse in downtown Stanton, out of the city. The referendum resoundingly indicated to the governing bodies that the people wanted to keep the courthouse in the city of Stanton.
I do recall.
And this clarification in law would allow the county and the city to cooperate, which they're doing marvelously now. They're working well together to come up with a plan to renovate the existing courthouse, but to create additional space which would be contiguous. And I will let, if you want to take a moment to hear from our distinguished members representing Augusta County. We can do
Okay,
that.
and Senator, before we get to that, are there any questions of Senator Hanger? The only question I have is, so this would allow an expansion of the existing building or something on the same property that is contiguous?
That is correct, although it would, contiguous could go across a public right-of-way, and in this instance, it's a city street, and they could possibly acquire another property, and.
Do you have some handouts for us?
I got handouts here. if y'all would like to-
With pictures and stuff? All right, any questions?
This is very straightforward.
Mr. Chairman, I have the chairman of the Augusta County Board of Supervisors.
Welcome,
here,
sir.
Gerald
Welcome,
Barber.
Mr. Chairman. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished members. Senator Hanger, I'm sorry I forgot my prepared remarks. That's an inside joke. Very briefly, what we have is a courthouse that needs to be renovated. We have property across the street that started out in life as a jail. It's now the under courts. And while there is a correlation between the courts and the jail, it's not a correlation that works well when you use the building for the same purposes. It was not designed to be renovated. We simply want to be able to accept the will of the people, which was stay in downtown, have a safe environment for the court system. We'd like for it to be legal, which is where you guys come in, because currently the Attorney General says we cannot go across the street and build additional court space.
So, Mr. Chairman, that place where the General District Court is used to be the jail,
Yes, sir.
and I've been there. And you
Oh,
need
as a
you need face-
citizen?
No, to the courthouse,
Okay.
not the jail.
It was
Not that I'm
also
telling.
it was also the county office building. It's been renovated many times. I liken it to a pair of shoes that you resold several times, but eventually you're out of that, and that's where we are with that building.
It is one of the smallest General District Courts I think I've ever been in. I practice all over the Commonwealth, so I understand. Okay. Anybody else? Any questions for the chairman of the
Any
Board of
questions?
Supervisors? Thank you, sir, for coming. We
Okay,
appreciate
thank
it
you.
very greatly. and
Mr.
thank you for
Chairman?
letting us know. Hold on.
Sorry.
We have other people?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, you would like to ask a question
Yes, to
of
the chairman.
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman?
The referendum.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, the referendum
chairman.
that was referenced, it was in regards to the expenditure itself or the actual location of the facility?
According to my friends who write the state laws, you have to put the expenditure and the location together. My theory is people voted no on the money, but there was no way to differentiate that, so they voted no resoundingly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Senator Hanger?
Yes.
Are there other people that'd like to speak towards this?
Chairman's done a good job.
Oh, everybody's.
Mr.
just-
Chairman, I'm
Chairman?
going to make a motion.
Mr. Chair, I view this as a clarification. There's also language where we expedited this down in Lexington, where they wanted to do it across the alley, and we did that. And it's a reasonable accommodation to allow the city and county to cooperate together here.
Senator, do you think by us voting for something like this, empowering Augusta County with this, is this contrary to the voters' wishes, or?
No, actually, this supports the voters' will resoundingly. They wanted to keep the courthouse in downtown Stanton.
That's right, because they're going to move it somewhere else.
Because it was a much lower cost, and it preserved the community of interest and the interest of both the city and the county.
Mr. Chairman, I visit downtown Stanton regularly because I serve on the Virginia School for the Deaf and Blind, and I can understand why you would want to just go across the street. That makes perfect sense to me. So I'm going to move to report the bill.
Motion being made to report. A second, I think I heard, properly supported. Any discussion on that motion? If not, clerk, open the roll. Congratulations, Senator Hanger. You
Thank you very
have
much.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
13 ayes, 0 nays. Senate Bill 538 reports.
Thank you. You're
I look forward to
enhancing
coming there and trying a
reasonable
case in the new courthouse.
Thank you.
All right, if you don't mind, I hate to do this but I have to leave, so I don't want these two bills to be heard. I know. So I'm going to turn over the chair to Senator Steph.
Hey, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, we have Senate Bill
Let's do 179, Mr. Chairman.
179 in front of us.
Okay, this is a bill which clarifies the comprehensive plan approval process for solar facilities. Right now, we have Code Section 15.2.2232 requires that any public area, street, park, or utility structure be in substantial accord with the locality's comprehensive plan. That interpretation varies widely with local zoning officials, whether it's even necessary for even our planning commissions to make those determinations that a solar facility is in substantial accord, however that's defined, with the comprehensive plan. This defines that by saying that a solar facility is substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan if, one, the solar facility is permitted by right in that zoning district, two, the solar facility is behind the meter that serves the property, like rooftop for residentials, net meter solar facilities, and small ag generators, and when you see in agriculturally zoned properties. Or three, that the solar facility is determined by the locality to be a large-scale facility that should be a feature shown on the comprehensive plan, is advertised and approved concurrently with a conditional use, special exception, or other legislative approval process. And that's the bill.
Thank you, Senator Stanley. Are there anyone to speak in
Oh, there's
favor
an
of the bill?
amendment too, so forget what I said.
All right.
The amendment? Just a line amendment.
Pass out the amendment.
Well, thanks a lot. Can you ever get it done? Can you just get it done before we go? I'm not trying to do that.
Is there a motion on the amendment?
You do it for dance, you do it for me.
Okay, the amendment is before us.
Please. And Mr. Dix in his jacket will explain the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment is to basically address two things. So working out with VACO, they've agreed that Little Romanet 1, if the facility is in a by right district, or Romanet 2, if it's sort of behind the meter, a small project, that's okay the way the language was in the original bill. The line amendment just simply adds and makes it clear that a locality can either have a comp plan hearing separate, or it can have a comp plan hearing jointly with its other legislative approval. So VML still has concerns about that language, but VACO is fine with this language. And
Mr.
this
Chairman.
overall, if you think about it, in terms of public facilities, Mr. Chairman, if you have a public facility, it should be designated on the comprehensive plan if it's large enough. And all this does is to basically provide for solar facilities that are small by right, don't need to go on the comp plan, don't need to have a comp plan hearing. And then the solar facilities that are behind the meter don't need a comp plan hearing. But a large solar facility can either have a comp plan hearing separate, or the locality at its discretion can combine that with legislative approval.
Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for the patron, or perhaps for Mr. Dix. Does it matter who owns these facilities? It could be Dominion Energy, it could be a private party, it could be a corporation. Is that the ownership of the facility is not affected by this language, is my question.
Mr. Chairman, I would say, Senator, that is correct, and that is consistent on page 1 of the bill. The public facility provisions begin on line 17 and talks about a street, a park, public building, public structure, public utility facility, or public service corporation facility. So all of those, if they're large enough, need to be designated on the comp plan through the 2232
So,
year.
so, Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up question.
Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what this does really is it empowers the jurisdiction to address these issues in the comp plan.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, I would say exactly.
That's, okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Favola. Are there any other questions? Is there anyone who opposes the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Preston Bryant on behalf of Virginia Municipal League. Solar is a quickly growing part of the energy sector. This energy infrastructure in our communities, we believe we very much need to be a part of the planning process. When you begin segregating and separating out certain types of facilities from the comprehensive planning process, we begin to get a bit concerned. So we do express those concerns.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else to speak in favor or in opposition to the bill? This committee operates by motion.
Look, it's me.
Second.
Hold on for a second. Nope, we didn't adopt the amendments. All right.
Second.
Okay, so the amendments are before us. All in favor of the amendments, signal aye.
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 Any opposition? Okay, so the bill is properly in front of us.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the committee? Let's open the rolls.
Ooh, you got a pen? You got a pen?
13 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, my first solar bill got passed.
Senator Stanley, your bill reports.
Mr. Green Energy. All right.
Senate Bill 429.
Yeah, I'm going to get primaried. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 429, and there is a substitute.
Can we distribute the substitute?
Just hand him out. There you go.
We have the substitute in front of us. Is there a motion on the substitute?
So moved.
Okay. The substitute's in front of us in proper order. Senator Stanley?
I think we need to vote on the substitute.
All in favor of the substitute, signal aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
All right, very good.
Senator Stanley.
Senate Bill 429 in substitute form basically creates a new code section in 15.2, which surprisingly we need, and it confirms that private property owners of real property that are zoned residential, agricultural, commercial, industrial, institutional, or mixed use would have the right to put a solar array up on the roof to serve the electrical needs of their property. Believe it or not, we don't have a code section that says that. Now, the property owner, this doesn't give them unlimited opportunity. The property owner still has to need to comply with setbacks, Chesapeake Bay, Historic District, and other applicable requirements that may apply in the locality's ordinances. You will also be subject to any condo or property owners association. I know you hate that, Senator Servo, that this should override that, but it doesn't. So you'd have those limitations as well. What we have here would be a law that would protect the private property rights of owners in real property. And, you know, like I said, I thought that we could already do this. It's not in the code. This makes it clear in the statute, so there is no question to anything. We're still acknowledging that ground-mounted facilities of solar arrays would still be subject to local government ordinances, and that there's a good policy reason for that. But this basically says that if we're going to have mixed-use electrical supplies or just go off the grid, that we here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, that private property owner has the right to do that. That's the bill.
Thank you, Senator Stanley. Is there anyone anyone wants to speak in support of the bill?
Ooh,
Mr. Dix.
Chip Dix. What a shot.
Chairman Chip Dix here. This was a Rubin Group bill. We spent 6 or 8 months working on it. And It basically establishes, as Senator Stanley said well, you can put a solar array on your roof, on your house, on your farm, on your business, institutional, local government. You can put solar arrays on your roof. We recognize, though, and you've got to comply with homeowners associations and all that stuff, but you also have to comply with setbacks. You cannot expand a non-conforming use, and you have to comply with historic districts. So it's pretty much consensus, I think, on those provisions. There's a provision that deals with ground-mounted, and ground-mounted solar generally can be the same height as the primary use. So the thought process was that localities should be able to adopt an ordinance to say how high an accessory ground-mounted unit could be. We did that on the last page, lines 80 through 86, and basically said in order to give localities an opportunity to make sure that they had the ordinance that they wanted for ground-mounted, that this bill would not become effective, that provision on the ground-mounted stuff wouldn't become effective until January 1 of 2019. And then to make sure that no bad actors went out there and put up stuff in the meantime, we said that any solar ground-mounted facility that was in place as of January 1 of 18 would be non-conforming, could be non-conforming and couldn't be required to be taken out of the ground. There have been some discussions with a couple of local governments about that provision. I've agreed that we would continue to talk with them in the process. This is obviously a fast-moving bill, but at the same time, I would represent to you that the rest of this bill, I believe, is in pretty good shape. VACO and BML still have some concerns, which I think you'll hear, but I'm happy to answer any questions. This is a consensus bill, if you will, under the consensus process in the Rubin Group.
Thank you, Mr. Dix. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of the bill? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Preston Bryan on behalf of the Virginia Municipal League. As I was saying a moment ago, by almost any measure, solar is growing in Virginia, and that's a good thing. The large-scale utility-scale solar, the 200 to 1,000 acre utility farms, DEQ has a line of about 80 of those projects that are notified for potential permits. That's a good thing. But at the same time, localities are struggling with how to handle these big projects. This bill addresses, as Mr. Dix said, the smaller scale, the rooftop, that which is generated on site. That also is a very, very quickly growing part of the renewables market. We get concerned when there is carved out by right for such energy infrastructure. You can imagine that when this energy infrastructure is deployed on structures in densely packed subdivisions, in densely packed neighborhoods, in complex, densely packed downtowns, local governments need to be a part of that process and not carved out and make this by right. Local governments like solar. We want solar to grow, but we want very much to be a part of its success, and so that we can avoid problems down the road where this is by right and you have this quickly deploying infrastructure. We would like to be a part of the process. For the same reason that this committee and other committees last year and this year are properly considering the role of local governments in, for example, wireless infrastructure, we would say we very much need to be a part of the process in this as well. Same arguments.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to the bill?
So, Mr. Chairman, not necessarily in opposition to the bill, but just to raise some concerns. My name is Chris Costa. I'm an assistant county attorney with Fairfax County, Virginia. Our board has no position on the bill as introduced, but I just see this enactment clause, which today was the first time I had a chance to really read this. And while Mr. Dix has assured me that we'll continue to work on the bill, and I've worked with him many times on bills before, and I appreciate that, I just want to make sure that certainly members of the committee who are from our county understand there are concerns I have with the lines 81 through 86 on this enactment clause. Ground-mounted solar facilities, my zoning administrator tells me we would probably call accessory uses. Our zoning ordinance already addresses accessory uses like sheds and other things. They can be allowed in certain parts of the yard. They have setback requirements, etc. If there was a ground-mounted solar facility in existence on December 1st, 2017, which is before January 1, 2018 here, it would not be non-conforming, it would be illegal. And that enactment clause would now make it a non-conforming use that we could not enforce our zoning ordinance to make right, to move to another part of the property so that it's correct. So that's a concern I have with that first sentence I speak, or that begins with, after the semicolon with the word however. The second sentence that says a zoning ordinance may provide that any ground mounting facility installed after January 1 is non-conforming. I'm sure that that's not what that's broader than what I understand is the intent of that. What it would mean on its face would be if you put in, if the bill were enacted, and someone put in a ground-mounted solar facility, regardless of what your zoning ordinance says about it, it is now non-conforming under this bill, and we would not be able to, again, enforce our zoning ordinance against that either. So I think that it's not written, as I read it, the way that it was intended. But again, with the assurance of Mr. Dix, I look forward to continuing to work with him on this language in this enactment clause, because the statements that he made, I think would be consistent with our position to not have a position, to not oppose the bill effectively.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
Senator Favola.
would it be possible for maybe to pass this by temporarily so they can work out some language and we can take up some other bills? Because I would like to have the language agreed to before I vote on it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, to interrupt you, but maybe, so I'd like to hear back from my staff first to make sure that that they agree with me. I'm only raising the concern because I don't want to come up with something later and look like I have sat on this too long. It's just I wanted to.
For the week?
I'm not asking for it to be passed by or anything like that. I'm just saying that we might need to, again, with Mr. Dix's assurance that he'll continue to work.
If I may, I'd like to give Senator Stanley
No.
an opportunity to address the concerns, and would you be willing to pass it by temporarily for the day?
Well, here's what I would
week?
suggest, because it is it's in a good shape, and this may be just some wordsmithing that can be done. If it passes out of the committee, I would take it out of first reading or second reading. I would take it out of first reading out of the block, pass it by so I could get it to second reading. Hopefully by then they would have something. If there wasn't, then I could send it back to this committee before we have our last meeting, just to keep moving forward.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Favola.
thank
I mean, this
you.
is
I
we've
will take
gone around to everybody.
Senator
and-
Stanley.
I will take Senator Stanley at his word.
Senator Favola.
So I'm going to go ahead with the understanding that you're going to continue to work on it, and you
Yes.
do know the process well. I will go ahead and make a motion to report.
So we have a motion in front of us to report Senate Bill 429 as amended, to further amend between now and second reading. That motion is properly in front of us.
Mr. Chairman, may it please, if I'd ask you.
Senator Stanley.
Perhaps if you're going to vote for it, to abstain, and that way it's not in the block, uncontested block, it'll be in the regular calendar. And that way it will be individually dealt with, and by second
Okay.
reading, we can take care of it there.
Senator Stanley, thank you for that recommendation. More than happy to do so. Is there any other member that wishes to speak on Senate Bill 429? With that, open the rolls.
To staff. And, all right. Thank you, sir.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Stanley, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm leaving you all in great hands, it looks like, so you guys have fun, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Senator Stanley. Let's see. Senator Edwards or Senator Chafin? Okay. Is there anyone on the committee that wishes to present a bill while we're waiting for Senator Chafin or Senator Edwards? Okay. Senator Chase was first, so ladies first, we'll go with her. Senator Chase, Senate Bill 714.
this your stuff?
I think this is, let me get my stuff out of the way. There we go.
I gave you a list, which had,
Is it this one?
no, it's near that one. No, there it is. There it is.
Senator Chase.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I already have a substitute that I'd like to be passed out at this time.
All right, so if you can just vote where it's done, if it's a question mark, you can chat.
Senate Bill 714, it pertains to local economic development expenditures. And I'll give you a chance to take a look at that.
There you go.
We have a substitute. Motion to move it. Is there a second? We have the substitute properly in front of us. Is there, voice or, okay, this is a voice vote. All in favor of the substitute, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Substitute's properly in front of us. Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first of all want to thank members of the committee who I've spent some time talking to in the interim since last week, and I thank you for the extra week. I have also spoken to a number of constituents that brought this issue to me and was able to bring on a couple speakers, so I'm going to be brief in my remarks. This is a transparency bill, which is why I'm bringing it forward. Any local economic development expenditure made pursuant to this article or any other provision of law shall be first approved by the local governing body was the original language. We're going to change expenditure basically to an entire budget so that individual expenses are not per item having to be approved by the Board of Supervisors, but rather, or local elected body, but an entire budget. So this bill basically says if you're a local economic development authority, you must first have your budget be approved by your local governing body, like the Board of Supervisors. It's simple accountability, making sure that the Board of Supervisors, who are elected by the people, approves the budget of their local economic development authority. This provides that any local economic development expenditure, which would be in the budget, shall first be approved by the local governing body. While it seems logical that this should already be taking place, sometimes it's not. In some cases it is. We need to ensure that our local governing body is approving the budget for these economic development expenditures and that every penny of taxpayer money is accounted for and approved by those whom the people elect. Bureaucrats who are not elected by the people should not be allowed to dole out taxpayer money. We have granted them the authority to do so through the General Assembly back in the 60s, but without ample oversight for how they are spending it. Should an economic authority be allowed to buy land, sell land, make a profit off of the land, and reinvest without prior authorization from the local elected board? The taxpayers in my district say emphatically no, but that's not what this bill does. That's what I wanted to do initially, but this is a compromise where basically their budget would have to be approved by the local elected authorities. I think this is a practice that the General Assembly through the Dillon Rule has given this ability to our economic development authorities and with not much oversight, and I have some concerns over that. I'd actually like to bring forward at this time, Pat McSweeney, just to give you a little bit of history. He's a prominent attorney who was around back in the 1960s when this legislation was passed and has a great historical background and information that I'd like for you all to take into account.
Mr. McSweeney.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I was here when this bill came up last week, and I was not aware of it. I apologize to Senator Chase because her constituents and Senator Sturdivant's constituents called me when I was very busy, not as a lawyer, but as someone who had written on this subject. And I told them that once a decision is made by one of these authorities, there's not a thing they can do about it unless it's patently illegal. I don't want to hurt Senator Chase's bill, and I told her this, but this scrutiny of the status and role of these EDAs, IDAs is long overdue.
In 1968, I was staff attorney to the Taxation Finance Subcommittee of, or we call it Committee of the Constitutional Revision Commission. Governor Harrison, then Mr. Lewis Powell, later Justice Powell, and Oliver Hill were the members of that committee. We took this up, but it had only been a year or so of experience with these EDAs. Professor Howard did comment on them in his commentaries, saying that it led to government fragmentation. When I directed the state reorganization in the early 70s, I tried to get the commission to take it up, but at that time we didn't have enough experience. The problem is, I think it's highlighted by a statement on the Chesterfield County website, which I apologize. I told Senator Chase I'd write something up, but I didn't get a chance to copy it for all of you. I will promise to send you my historical background just to give you context. Chesterfield County website has this statement. Created in 1968, the Chesterfield Economic Development Authority is chartered through a state law that allows cities and counties to create industrial economic development authorities with wide-ranging powers, not available to local governments, in order to facilitate economic development within the community. The problem that Professor Howard addressed, and it has concerned me, and it's come up in several instances throughout the Commonwealth, is that these unaccountable, unelected bodies take actions to issue bonds, hire employees, consultants, professionals, make decisions that cities and counties cannot make. For example, they can lease property, they can acquire property, engage in lease arrangements that cities are restricted to do for more than 40 years. There are other restrictions in the Constitution imposed on localities that are not imposed on economic development authorities. I don't know why we should have these authorities with final authority to make these decisions, when since the special fund doctrine was adopted in the 60s, cities and counties can do exactly what these EDAs do by issuing revenue bonds. But this is a substantial danger. Let me give you one example that caused, in my opinion, the loss of 2 ballot measures in 1998 to amend the Constitution. They lost, in my opinion, because of an example that came from Loudoun County. There'd been a local referendum to approve a new facility in Loudoun County, which was overwhelmingly rejected by the voters there. The next year, the EDA actually issued bonds and built the same facility and leased it back to the county. It caused such an outrage that example was used throughout the Commonwealth to defeat those ballot measures. The problem is these things come up episodically, and it highlights the danger of having unelected bodies do this sort of thing. But there has been no comprehensive look. There's been no consideration of the context. And my concern to Senator Chase was I would not want her bill to pass and you think that you had dealt with the problem, because spending money is only part of the problem. EDAs and IDAs can acquire property, they can lease it and dispose of it, independent of the city or county, execute whatever contracts they want, they can issue bonds, they can borrow money, make loans and grants, hire staff. Once they do that, the local government has no control. Once they create these entities, they have no control.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Favola.
Thank you. Question for the speaker?
Yes, Senator.
Just, thank you. Just articulate for me the relationship between an Economic Development Authority and the Board of Supervisors. It's my understanding that the Board of Supervisors, or local governing body, actually has to establish the authority and can condition the authority however the local government chooses to do so. Sometimes the local government wants the authority to have expansive powers, for better or for worse. That's a choice on behalf of the local government. So it seems to me that the point of accountability would be the folks elected to represent individuals who sit on their, the folks who are sitting on those councils or boards of supervisors or county commissions. Is that not, am I incorrect in this analogy?
I'm not confident.
Mr. McSweeney?
Yes.
I just want to turn it back over to you.
The ability to condition the execution of an enabling law that the General Assembly has enacted is not settled. Even so, even if it were possible for the locality to do that, it is still giving over a final decision that should be exercised by elected officials. There's nothing the local government can't do that they can't do that these EDAs can do. There's no reason not to have them as advisory bodies, but to have them execute these decisions creates a shadow government potentially in every locality in Virginia, and it certainly exists in many now.
One follow-up question.
Senator Favola.
Just to reiterate, though, this bill doesn't fix that.
No.
So,
No, my concern is that if you enact this and you're confident this has solved the problem, there's a deeper underlying problem. This addresses only a small part of the problem of expenditures, and we had it in my county before Senator Sturdivant represented Powhatan. We had it where a local authority acquired some property that was contrary to the wishes of the Board of Supervisors. Those things are not capable of undoing legally by the local governing body. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McSweeney. Is there anyone else that hold on, we've got a couple more questions. Senator Morrison.
Yeah, for the patron, Senator Chase, it says the locality shall approve all economic development grants made to any person. How about economic grants made to an entity?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
Surville.
Surville.
Parliamentary inquiry for our council. Isn't it true that Title I of the Code of Virginia defines a person as including a corporation? Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Surville.
Thank you. I have a couple folks that would like to speak in support of the bill.
We've got a couple more questions, Senator.
Okay, sure.
So if you can give me a second. Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm trying to understand I think I understand how this would work if you have a single locality that created an EDA that only worked in that locality. But how would this work if you have something like the Greater Richmond Partnership, which is a 501c3 economic development authority for Richmond, Chesterfield, Hanover, Henrico? Each of those governing bodies have representatives who are on the board, but as I read this bill, before any locality could give funds to the Greater Richmond Partnership, that would have to be approved by each of the governing bodies of the localities that make up that entity. Am I reading that right?
There should be a budget. Anytime that we spend taxpayer monies, there should be a budget that would be approved. So in that case, I would imagine that you would have the elected officials that serve on that regional partnership to vote on that budget to approve expenditures. And what we're doing is making sure that taxpayer dollars are all being accounted for.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
So again, just trying to understand logistically how that would work. So if you have the Greater Richmond Partnership has a board, the board includes elected representatives from each of the jurisdictions that are on it. The Greater Richmond Partnership would approve its own budget. As I read your bill, though, Richmond City Council, the Hanover Board of Supervisors, the Henrico Board of Supervisors, and Chesterfield County Board of Supervisors would have to approve the Greater Richmond Partnership's budget in order for the Greater Richmond Partnership to receive any funds from any locality.
That is correct.
Senator Chase.
Okay.
Back to you, Senator Chase. You said you had two more speakers on this.
Yes, at this point, if members of BART are here, it's a constituency group here.
Okay, and since we have 11 more bills to go, we're actually going to put a timer on from here forward. I apologize for that, but if we don't, we're going to be here until about 11.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Mike Uzel. I'm a lifelong resident of Chesterfield and a founding member of the Bermuda Advocates for Responsible Development, local citizens group, and other members are here to support us. I'm here to express my support for Senator Chase's bill, although I haven't looked at the amended bill or the changed bill. Prior to August 31st this year, when the governor came to Chesterfield to announce plans for a new Matoaca megasite, I didn't know much about EDAs. In the ensuing 5 months, we've learned that there's not a plan from the governor at all. Our local EDA is the applicant and is rezoning this property for a megasite. In Chesterfield, at least, lack of EDA transparency, accountability, and responsibility is disconcerting to me and many others. Here are some examples. 4 monthly county EDA board meetings our group has attended have ranged in time from 10 minutes to 45 minutes. So in 4 months, the EDA in Chesterfield has met publicly a total of 2 hours. And that's not dealing just with the megasite, but several other EDA projects. There are other special EDA, there's a special EDA meeting today being held at this time, conflicting directly with this meeting. Many of our group are there. We chose to be here to support this bill. Another thing, there's no public comment period during the EDA meetings in Chesterfield. There's also no public access to our board members. Our group is asked to meet with the EDA chairman, and instead, we got a meeting with the director of the Chesterfield Department of Economic Development, which is the Chesterfield's development department, not the EDA. We have examples of the Chesterfield Director of Economic Development, a Chesterfield employee, signing documents on behalf of the EDA. There are also reimbursed EDA expenditures for the last 3 years, according to the FOIA documents that we've received, that have been considerably over the county budgeted amounts for those reimbursements. We ask questions concerning our EDA of our elected officials, and we're ignored or met with long delays in responses. I realize that these local issues are local issues and that we can't expect you to directly intervene. I give these examples to illustrate the lack of transparency we are experiencing in our county. I understand that the bill under consideration would not necessarily remedy all of these problems. I do believe, though, that it would be a step in the right direction to provide greater transparency concerning EDA operations. It would also serve to place greater responsibility on local governing bodies to be accountable to the citizens who elected them. Our group is not opposed to responsible development. I ask you to vote for this bill to shed light on this dark corner of our local government. I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Mr. Chair, my name is Phil Lohr, and I'm also a lifelong resident of Chesterfield County, and I'm going to abbreviate my remarks so the length of time we have to support the president, the head of our BARD organization. Citizens expect elected officials, their appointees, to be transparent when spending public money. This bill's requirement that the local governing body approve the remended bill will force elected officials to be more transparent and accountable. ASCEDA signed options on 1,675 acres for $15 million and requested rezoning for heavy industrial use for the purpose of developing a megasite. None of the 7 appointed CEDA board members live in the Bermuda district of the proposed megasite. This is what we consider industrialization without representation. BARD is opposing this case as the property is directly adjacent to over 40,000 residential citizens. The Greater Richmond Partnership research shows most mega and large industrial sites are located in sparsely populated rural areas. This is the reason we're here today. We have severe problems with the accountability and a CEDA in Chesterfield County going out on its own without any vote of the Board of Supervisors and signing an option for acreage which is directly right by residential areas that we looked all over the country. And there aren't any other mega sites that have this kind of population, residential population directly. And this is part of what this amended bill addresses. And we'd certainly like you gentlemen today to support us. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Chase, we're 5.5 minutes if we can
That's okay, we'll
get your last speaker quickly, and then.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Gary Metzinger. My daughter and I live within a mile of this new mega site. It's a very highly populated residential area. There's 40,000 people living within a 5-mile radius of this mega site. The first time I ever heard about the mega site was when a neighbor said, come to this public meeting, they're going to discuss what it's all about. To me, there was not transparency, there was not an opportunity to work with the mega site officials, EDA. And it was, let's get her done and they'll live with it. There's an east-west freeway which also cuts through these residential areas to make this mega site happen. It's a large swath of a residential area. I don't think it was properly planned. So for that reason, I think we need the accountability that this bill presents. Please vote for it. Thank you very much.
Senator Chase, we're at almost 7 minutes. Okay, if we can make it very brief,
Yes, sir,
please.
I will. Thank you,
ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Amy Cannon, and I do support Senate Bill 714, not only because it does directly affect me in Chesterfield County, but I think it would stop potential problems elsewhere in the state. As a citizen, I am experiencing firsthand what this is. The ability to upset the lives of more than 40,000 residents is certainly not right, and the ability to spend millions of our tax dollars with limited accountability is not right. There certainly needs to be a better checks and balances system for those appointed, not elected representatives. I believe that SB 714 is a step in the right direction for public transparency and higher accountability, and I trust that you will agree. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Chase, if you want to wrap it up real quick.
I am going to conclude my remarks with saying to the committee, I just encourage you to support this bill for transparency. We've talked about this for over a week. I would encourage you to support the bill. I think they've said enough.
Thank you. Is there anyone in opposition to this bill?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Mike Woods with Troutman Sanders Strategies, and we represent the Virginia Economic Developers Association. While the Virginia Economic Developers Association supports the prudent and well-managed use of public funds in delivering economic development services among all of Virginia's communities, we oppose Senate Bill 714 as an unprecedented and unwarranted effort to constrain the ability of economic development professionals across the Commonwealth to effectively respond to creating job opportunities, and it limits our abilities to compete in the global environment. As you're well aware, the General Assembly has long recognized the need for authorities to undertake a variety of functions in the Commonwealth, from economic development to wastewater to housing. And they've granted autonomy to economic developers to meet citizens' needs. This bill would undermine one of the long-standing tools that we have in Virginia to promote job creation. And as we've heard from a number of the speakers, it appears to me that this is a Chesterfield County issue, not a statewide issue. So therefore, I would ask that you defeat Senate Bill 714 as amended. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wood, thank you very much. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Mathias from the City of Virginia Beach. Economic Development Authority has been very successful over the years in creating thousands of jobs and tens of millions of dollars of economic development. Whenever the council has been good at transferring property to them for them to develop it, and they have generated, again, just thousands of opportunities throughout the city. We haven't heard any complaints with our process, And as the previous speaker said, I just add that hard cases make bad law. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Lurch, representing the Virginia Association of Counties. What I'll just add to the conversation is we've been hearing from county administrators across the state with concerns about the legislation that seeks to be enacted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Neil Minks, representing Virginia Municipal League. Just to say that EDA members, the board, are appointed by their local governing bodies. They are held accountable by their local governing bodies. The local governing bodies themselves are responsible and held accountable to the voters. And I think that's where the connection is for redressing problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Chase. And we have a question from Senator McClellan. So Senator McClellan and then Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not sure if this is for Senator Chase or for the VML representatives or for council. But as I understand Part A of the statute that you're trying to amend with this substitute, wouldn't any funds that a locality gives to, for the purpose of promoting economic development to any person that's covered in B, wouldn't that be done through either an appropriation in their budget or some other, public action from the governing body that would occur in a public meeting with opportunity for citizens to be heard and a vote?
Well, as we've heard today from some of the constituents in my area, that public comment period isn't always present. It's not part of best practices.
No, Ms. Chair, I'm not.
Senator McClellan.
My question is, and I don't know, maybe, my understanding is no local government can appropriate money except through a vote of the governing body of that, so Richmond City Council, Chesterfield County Board of Supervisors, any money that the Chesterfield County government is appropriating must be done in an open meeting through either the budget process or an ordinance.
Senator McClellan, that was exactly what I thought should happen. And after I've done all this research, I found out it's not happening. The EDAs, when I'm looking, you look at the language of what the General Assembly, the powers they gave them, they don't have to report back
Senator Chase.
to the governing authority.
Senator McClellan.
Let me ask counsel, because I think, Senator Chase, you and I are talking past each other. I'm not talking about money that the EDA spends. I'm talking about any public money that comes from a local government is appropriated through some sort of ordinance and can only be given if there's some kind of vote. And maybe this is a question for council. That's correct. Thank you.
Senator McClellan, thank you very much. Senator Chase, if you can wrap it up real quick.
I think that the constituents in my district have spoken. This is a practice and a policy that the General Assembly gave these EDAs back in the 60s. And quite honestly, I don't think it holds, I don't think it's a very transparent process. We've seen and heard situations where budgets and expenditures are not being approved by the people that are elected. There needs to be some more accountability, and I feel like this bill, by having the local elected officials approving those budgets, would help take care of that, or at least codify it.
Okay, thank you, Senator Chase.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak? Is there anyone on the committee that wishes to speak?
I have a motion.
Substitutes properly in front of us. Oh, I'm sorry. Apologize, we have one more to speak. If we could make it very, very brief.
It'll be very quick. My name's Tom Watson. I live in Chesterfield. It's my understanding that I think there are 9 of these mega industrial sites in Virginia that were developed by economic development associations. 7 of them, I think, are currently unoccupied. 2 of them are partially occupied. It's a lot of taxpayer money that has gone into building these things, setting them up, and very low return for any of these situations that they put together. My question is, who makes the money out of these things, and shouldn't something be done to take this out of the hands of people that haven't been elected? Because once it's there, it's forced down your throats.
Thank you, sir. The bill is properly in front of us. The substitute is properly in front of us. This committee operates by motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Favola.
I do understand the issue that the patron has brought before us, and I do respect the views of the many fine people who came to us from Chesterfield and are very upset about not understanding or having input into what the Development Authority is doing. I sincerely believe in my heart, however, that the proposal before us will not address the issues that you really want addressed. And I don't want to make a bad law, and I don't want to make an ineffective law. I believe that you really need to go back to the Board of Supervisors. That's where your elected accountability point is, and request that the Board of Supervisors be much more transparent in their relationship with the Economic Development Authority. Having said that, I am going to make a motion that we PBI the bill. I'm happy to work with you in the future on this.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add to that we have tried to work with the Board of Supervisors. And
Senator Chase.
what type of recourse do the constituents have if their Board of Supervisors is not listening other than to vote them out?
Okay, we have a motion that's properly in front of us. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion properly in front of us. We have a second.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servant.
Discussion. Senator Chase, as I read the substitute that you provided us with today, it seems like you have scaled back pretty significantly the original bill that you had, trying to find, it sounds like a consensus opportunity here. And from what I have heard today, I guess I have not heard a policy reason why, from the folks who oppose your bill, a policy reason why it is a bad idea or not good policy for a Board of Supervisors or a City Council to approve expenditures by an EDA or to simply approve their budget. I heard several things, but I didn't hear a policy reason of why that is a good idea, and I'm having a hard time thinking of one. As I read your substitute, this does not prevent the EDAs from spending public money, and it doesn't prevent them from developing a budget. It simply provides a level of oversight and approval by elected officials. Is that a fair reading of your?
Senator Sturtevant, my initial reaction after I heard what was going on was to eliminate EDAs in Virginia altogether. Just completely eliminate it. That was my first bill that I was going to put in, and was talked off the ledge, if you will. I wish I'd kept that original bill in, because you're right. What I feel like what I've done in this bill is a compromise to say, if we're going to have EDAs, then let's have their expenditures put in a budget which is approved by an elected local body, which is elected by the people, so that, I mean, in my opinion, it's a constitutionality thing, and I can think of plenty of authorities that have been deemed unconstitutional in years past, but I didn't go there. What is happening is the EDAs are allowed to spend this money without the approval of the Board of Supervisors. And if you look at the law, and I can go in and read this section to you, but the General Assembly is the one that gave them the authority to do this. We did this, and so we need to be the ones to go in and correct it.
Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute motion to report.
Senator Sturtevant to report. So we have a substitute. Is there a second to the substitute?
I'll second it.
Okay. So the substitute to report Senate Bill 714 is properly in front of us. Is there any discussion? Clerk, call the roll. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, nay. Hold on. Oh. It's not switching for me. Hold on, we have a technical difficulty here.
Stanley should be a yes vote.
Actually, unfortunately, he is not.
Because we had a discussion before this meeting that he was going to vote yes. So
I have in writing.
that's
something
why he
different, so I
left. He didn't want to
apologize for
face
that.
me.
We have a technical difficulty here. If you can record Senator Stanley as a no.
6 ayes, 7 nays.
The motion fails. The motion of PBI fails. We're back to our original, I'm sorry, the motion to report fails. We're back to our original motion. Actually, motion fails, period, we're done. Yeah, motion fails to report. Bill fails to report. So
Can we wait for Senator Stanley? I can call him on his cell phone. I'd be happy to do that.
Bring it back off the table.
Yeah, we can always bring it back off the table if you can flip them back.
Yeah, I did speak with him before he left. He was supposed to be an aye.
Okay. Sorry, I just have what's in.
Do you want to call him?
You're happy to do so if you'd like. We're going to move on to.
Why don't you pass it by temporarily, and I'll be back.
No, we
gonna
took a
call
vote.
him.
No,
Yeah,
you've
we've
got to
taken a
bring it
vote. We
back
can't
up.
do that. So we can bring it back. We can get somebody on the prevailing side to bring it back. If you want to get Senator Stanley to change that. Otherwise, unfortunately, we're going to move on. And I apologize. No harm to the Senator, to you, Senator Chase, but we will follow proper procedures here and move forward. So I apologize for that. With that, we have Senator Chafin, who's been waiting quite a long time. Senator Chafin, we have two bills, Senate Bills 371 in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 371, taking them in order. Senate Bill 371 is a bill that would allow private landowners to allow their property to be utilized for purposes of hiking trails or horseback riding trails and the such, as well as boat landings, that type of thing for the public's use. And it would allow, it will allow the localities would be able to enter into agreements with the landowners to establish agreements to that, and there would be no civil liability now, and under this for simple negligence and the such. So the goal of the legislation is to expand outdoor activities in the region in Southwest Virginia. We have a new state park, the Clinch River State Park, that has had money appropriated to it for the purchase of real estate that follows. It's the first river of its type. It's a linear state park. It follows the Clinch River, and so it's envisioned that private property owners will participate in the development of it, and will have features along the way that people will be able to use. And this bill will help incent and facilitate the cooperation of private landowners.
Senator Chafin, thank you for that wonderful explanation. Is there anyone to speak in support of this bill? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to this bill? Okay. We have a motion in front of us, properly seconded, on Senate Bill 371. Clerk, open the rolls.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before we close the roll, Senator Stanley's a yes on this. We still have technical difficulties here. Okay, clerk, close the rolls. The bill properly reports. Senator Chafin, Senate Bill 448. And before you get started, I have a letter from the Chairman of Finance that indicates that the above bill has a fiscal impact, so if we elect to push this out, it goes up to Finance.
I understand. I understand. So Senate Bill 448 deals with abandoned schools. We've had a number of school consolidations throughout Southwest Virginia and in my district in particular due to some loss of our population, local population, and downturn in the economy and the coal industry. So many of the coalfield areas are struggling with what to do with these schools. Okay, we've got school buildings. They were just in use, and so what the goal of this legislation is to empower those localities to offer incentives to prospective employers that would utilize schools that are no longer in use. We've used these schools, over the years. I'm sure in your localities to some degree too. You've used schools for community centers, for different things. But some of these schools offer quite a bit of property, and they offer a unique opportunity to have something a bit more rewarding and compelling. So that's essentially what the bill does. It would create and establish revitalization zones where there would be certain incentives that could be offered by the locality.
Thanks, Senator Chafin. Is there anyone to speak in support of Senate Bill 448? We have somebody running up behind you, Senator Chafin, if you could. Want to make sure you're not knocked out of the way or tackled.
I'm happy for anybody to speak in support of 448.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Rafferty, and I'm with the Department of Housing and Community Development. And I'm actually here on behalf of the administration to support the bill, as we believe that it gives the Coalfield region the opportunity to assist in converting the closed schools into revitalized properties that will create new economic development opportunities for the region.
And we have questions. Senator McClellan first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Chafin, I like your bill so much that I'm wondering, why just limited it to the Coalfield region? I mean, I can think of some other rural areas, particularly some of the old tobacco areas or places like Charles City County that have also had similar issues with consolidation and school buildings that right now, somebody might want to come renovate. So would you be and I don't see a fiscal impact statement, so I don't know if that's why you limited it, but assuming it didn't do your bill any harm, would you be willing to expand it beyond the Coalfield region?
Senator Chafin, and if I may just clarify, there is, Finance has requested this because there is a financial impact on this.
It's not on our
Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, we didn't receive a fiscal impact statement, and as such, I mean, these are not state finances that are being utilized here. These are local issues, as I understand the bill. But I understand getting a letter from the Finance Committee too. So, I mean, I'm not opposed to it being to this being a larger issue for other areas of the Commonwealth. I imagine that there are many rural areas other than just in these coalfield counties where the economy is not robust as it is in other places. So I'm not opposed to it, but if the end result is if I get the finance and suddenly the end result is they've come up with an impact statement that has quadrupled or larger, then I think it's hurtful to my bill.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, follow
Senator
up.
McClellan.
Yeah, I'm not going to offer an amendment for that reason, but I would strongly encourage you that as this moves through the process, if funding itself is not an issue, to at least think about and maybe raise with the Finance Committee or the House the possibility of expanding this to other rural areas that are outside of the Coalfield District.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, I would certainly do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would this bill apply to the Dickinson County Memorial and Industrial Highway? High School in Clintwood on East Main and High Street?
It actually would, yes.
Mr. Chairman, that's a beautiful building. I love this bill and move to report.
We have a few more speakers, a few more folks wishing to speak. So Senator Marston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love the bill. The only part I have some heartburn over is the being able to overturn regulations around sediment and erosion control. How does that, that's a statewide
Senator
law.
Mr. Chairman, this bill would simply give regulatory flexibility. As it's drafted, it would give regulatory flexibility to grant special zoning and also special use permits and exclude. I think it just excludes the ordinances or provisions of the erosion sediment.
Gotcha.
Okay. Senator Chafin, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in the audience? Senator Servo.
Chairman, I have a question for the patron.
Senator Servo.
We've had some issues with schools going out of use in Northern Virginia, even in Fairfax County. Older historic schools that are no longer meet modern standards, and they want to have new modern ones, but they want to keep the old building. And in Loudoun, they've got a bunch that were built during the Depression. And they've been trying to use historic tax credits to renovate them. Is there anything in your bill that requires that the actual school itself, if it's beautiful, as Senator McPike has stated, requires them to preserve the school as part of this, or can they just sort of come in, bulldoze everything clean, and just build a bunch of houses?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Serval, there's nothing that requires preservation in this as it is currently drafted. There's no, the areas that this is currently drafted to assist do not have a demand for additional housing. There is no great demand for additional housing at this time, so that would probably not be an issue. But certainly what I contemplated was the use of the building as it is, because the building is an asset. The building has been preserved, has been maintained. It's an asset. They've not been declared by the localities. These buildings that this might pertain to are not buildings that have been declared and sold by the counties. They're still being maintained by them.
Senator Chafin, thank you very much. We have the bill properly in front of us. We have a move to report, and we have a second and re-refer to finance, I believe was the motion. We had a second on that. Let's open the rolls. I'm still having technical difficulties on this.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Senator Chafin, thank you very much. Is Senator Edwards? I don't see Senator Edwards. Okay. We have folks that are ready to go, so I'll start with Senator Somerville. Or how about this? We'll go with Senator McClellan. I thought you were ready. Oh, okay.
$622.
We have an amendment in front of us. We have an amendment in front of us.
Move the amendment. Second.
Okay, we have an amendment that's properly in front of us. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 622 has to do with utility undergrounding in a corridor that is planned to be served by mass transit. So right now, just to give you some context, right now, VDOT will only pay to move utilities, but VDOT does not pay to underground them. If a locality wants to underground utilities, VDOT will contribute the amount of money they would have used. VDOT policy is to contribute the amount of money they would have spent to move the utility, but they will not fund the actual undergrounding. So least in the 36th district, and I think around the state, we're planning more and more of these transit facilities. And if you're going to build transit, the federal government requires you to also build development that is supportive of transit. So transit-oriented developments, things like mixed-use developments and higher densities. If you want to do higher density, most higher density developments have undergrounded utilities. And so if you do mass transit, mixed-use development, undergrounded utilities is kind of part of the issue. And the way our current funding streams are set up, the state does not contribute to underground utilities at all whatsoever, because historically that's sort of been a luxury that we haven't contemplated, because we haven't done a lot of mass transit, mixed-use sort of types of developments in this state until more recently. In discussions in my locality, first of all, Prince William County agreed to bury all their utilities. Fairfax County, move it along.
Moving along, we're going to recess here or adjourn, it looks like. We will.
Okay, well, I'll just say really quick, all this does is it gives localities the ability to allocate monies that they get to decide how to spend on underground utilities. It doesn't require them to do anything, and it doesn't take money from anybody else. These are funding streams that our localities have, only that they get to decide how to spend. It just says they can spend on underground utilities if they want to, but they don't have to. That's all it says.
Got it. We have motion to report, properly seconded. Open the rolls.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
With that, we have been directed to wrap it up, so we'll do just that. The committee will rise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.